In the bustling city of Lagos, Nigeria, lived a young girl named Adebola. She was only 15 years old and lived with her parents in a small apartment. Adebola was a bright student, but she had a secret that was eating her up inside. Despite her parents' warnings, Adebola had been secretly meeting a boy from her school. Her mother's words kept ringing in her ears. "Focus on your studies, Adebola. Boys will only distract you." But Adebola thought she was in love. One day, Adebola started feeling very sick. She was throwing up in the mornings and always felt tired. With a heavy heart, she realized she might be pregnant. Shaking with fear, she told her boyfriend. "I think I'm going to have a baby," Adebola whispered to him after school one day. Her boyfriend's face went pale. "What? No way! It can't be mine," he said, backing away from her. "But you're the only boy I've been with," Adebola said, tears filling her eyes. "I don't care. I'm too young for this. Don't tell anyone it's mine," he said coldly and ran away, leaving Adebola all alone and scared. For weeks, Adebola tried to hide her secret. She wore loose clothes and tried to act normal, but she was always worried her parents would find out. Every night, she cried herself to sleep, not knowing what to do. One evening, she heard her parents talking in the kitchen. "Adebola seems different lately," her father said. "She's so quiet." "Maybe she's just working hard on her studies," her mother replied. Adebola felt terrible. She knew her parents had big dreams for her future, and now she had let them down. She was scared of what they might do if they found out she was pregnant. "What am I gonna do?" she whispered to herself, hugging her pillow tightly. Days passed, and Adebola couldn't stop thinking about her problem. She was too scared to tell her parents or anyone else. One afternoon, as she was walking home from school, she passed by the bus station. She stopped and looked at the big buses lined up, ready to take people to faraway places. Suddenly, an idea came to her mind. That night, Adebola couldn't sleep. She kept thinking, "I can't stay here. I can't face my parents or anyone else." The next morning, after her parents left for work, Adebola made a big decision. With shaky hands, she packed a small bag with some clothes and the little money she had saved. She looked around her room one last time, at her school books, her favorite teddy bear, and the family photos on the wall. "I'm sorry, Mama and Papa, I love you. Please don't look for me." She left it on her bed, hoping it would give her some time before they started searching for her. With a heavy heart, Adebola left her home. As she walked to the bus station, she kept looking back, afraid someone might see her and stop her. At the station, she went to buy a ticket. "One ticket, please," Adebola said in a shaky voice. "To anywhere far from here." The ticket seller looked at her strangely, but didn't ask any questions. "Next bus is going to Abuja. It leaves in 15 minutes. Adebola nodded and bought the ticket with most of her money. As she waited for the bus, she thought about her parents coming home to find her gone. She imagined how worried and angry they would be. But in her mind, this was the only way out. When the bus arrived, Adebola took one last look at Lagos, the only home she had ever known. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she got on the bus. As it started moving, Adebola watched through the window as Lagos disappeared in the distance. She put her hand on her stomach, feeling scared about her future and the baby growing inside her. "I'm sorry," she whispered to her parents, to her unborn baby, and to herself. As the bus sped towards Abuja, Adebola closed her eyes, hoping that somehow things would work out. After a long, tiring journey, the bus finally reached Abuja. Adebola stepped off, feeling dizzy and overwhelmed. The city was huge, with tall buildings and so many people rushing around. It was nothing like her neighborhood in Lagos. "Where do I go now?" Adebola muttered to herself, holding her small bag tightly. She had used all her money for the bus ticket and had nowhere to stay. As night fell, Adebola wandered the streets of Abuja. Her stomach growled with hunger, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since morning. She passed by food sellers, the smell of their jollof rice and suya making her mouth water, but she had no money to buy anything. "Excuse me," she tried asking a woman walking by. "Do you know where I can find a cheap place to sleep?" The woman just hurried past without even looking at her. Adebola felt more alone than ever. As it got darker, Adebola became more scared. She had no place to sleep and the streets were getting scary. She kept walking, her feet hurting, hoping to find somewhere safe to rest. In a quieter part of the city, Adebola saw an old woman closing up a small shop. Desperate for help, she went up to the woman. "Good evening, Ma," Adebola said, her voice shaking. "Please, I'm new here and I'm lost. Can I sleep at your house just for tonight? Please help me." The old woman looked at Adebola with surprise. "What do you mean you're lost? Where are your parents? Why are you out so late?" Adebola, feeling trapped and scared, decided to tell the truth. "I ran away from home," she admitted, starting to cry. "I'm pregnant, and I was scared to tell my parents. I have nowhere to go." The old woman's face changed from surprise to disappointment. "You got pregnant? At your age? Hey, you must be a stubborn child," she said, shaking her head. "Now go away. I can't help you." Adebola felt her heart sink. She had hoped the woman would help her, but instead, she was being sent away again. With tears running down her face, she walked away, feeling more alone than ever. As she continued walking, Adebola got very tired. She found a big tree in a quiet area and sat down under it. She was just about to fall asleep when she heard footsteps coming closer. Adebola's eyes opened wide, and she saw a group of rough-looking boys walking towards her. Without thinking, she jumped up and started running. "Hey, where are you going?" one of the boys shouted, and Adebola heard them start to chase her. "Please, God, help me," she prayed silently as she ran as fast as she could through the strange streets, trying to get away from the boys chasing her. After running for what felt like hours, Adebola finally lost the group of boys. She was out of breath and her legs were shaking. She found herself in a quiet area with some unfinished buildings. As she caught her breath, Adebola thought about her family back in Lagos. She imagined her mother finding her empty room and the note she left. She could almost hear her father's angry voice and her mother's crying. "I'm sorry, Mama. I'm sorry, Papa," she whispered, tears falling down her face. As she walked through the quiet area, Adebola saw an unfinished building. It had no windows or doors, but it looked like a good place to hide. She went inside carefully, calling out softly, "Hello, is anyone here?" When no one answered, she went in. The floor was hard and dusty, but Adebola was so tired that it felt comfortable. She found a corner that was hidden from the entrance and sat down, using her small bag as a pillow. As she tried to get comfortable, Adebola put her hand on her stomach. "I'm sorry, little one," she whispered to her unborn baby. "I don't know what we're gonna do, but I'll try to figure something out, I promise." The night was long and scary. Every noise made Adebola jump, thinking someone had found her hiding place. But as the sun started to come up, she realized she had made it through her first night in Abuja. Days turned into weeks, and Adebola struggled to survive in Abuja. She was always hungry and scared. To get food, she had to beg on the streets. "Please, can you spare some food?" she would ask people passing by. Some people ignored her, but others gave her small bits of food or a little money. To earn some money, Adebola started washing clothes for people in the area where she was staying. "I can wash your clothes for you," she'd offer to women she saw. "I'll do a good job, I promise." One woman, Mrs. Okafor, became someone Adebola would wash clothes for regularly. "You work hard, Adebola," she'd say, giving her a little money. "But you shouldn't be doing this in your condition." Adebola would just nod and say, "Thank you, Ma, I have no job." Months passed like this, with Adebola barely getting by. Then, one evening, as she sat in her hiding place in the unfinished building, she felt a sharp pain. "Oh no," she gasped, realizing what was happening. "Not now, please, not now." But the baby was coming, and Adebola was all alone. She cried out in pain, but no one was around to hear her. For hours, Adebola struggled, the pain worse than anything she had ever felt. "I can't do this," she sobbed, but her body kept working to bring the baby into the world. Finally, with one last big push, the baby was born. Adebola, tired and shocked, looked at the tiny crying baby. "Hello, little one," she whispered, tears running down her face. With shaking hands, she cleaned the baby as best she could using the cleanest cloth she had. As she held her child, a little girl, Adebola felt both love and worry. She knew she couldn't take care of the baby properly. She had no money, no home, no way to keep her daughter healthy and safe. "What am I going to do with you?" she asked the baby, who was now quiet and looking up at her with big eyes. "I want to keep you, but I can't. I'm so sorry." Adebola spent the night holding her daughter, trying to feed her and keep her warm. But as the sun came up, she knew she had to make a hard decision. She couldn't keep the baby with her. It would be dangerous for both of them. An idea came to Adebola's mind. It broke her heart, but she knew it was the only way to give her daughter a chance at a good life. "I have to be strong," she told herself. "For you, my little one, for you." She looked at her baby's tiny face, her heart heavy with the decision she was about to make. Tears falling down her cheeks, she spoke softly to her daughter. "My sweet baby," Adebola whispered, her voice shaking. "Please forgive me for what I'm about to do. I know you won't understand, but I'm so sorry. This is the only way I can give you a chance at a better life. I want you to know that I love you so much." The baby made a small sound, not knowing about her mother's sadness. Adebola hugged her tightly, trying to remember every little thing about her face. With shaking hands, Adebola wrapped the baby in the cleanest cloth she had. She took a deep breath, getting ready for what she was about to do. "It's time," she said quietly, more to herself than to the baby. Adebola stepped out of her shelter, holding her daughter close. She walked to the next street, where she knew a rich family lived. Their big house stood out among the other buildings, looking like something from a dream to Adebola. As she got close to the rich family's house, Adebola started to have doubts. "What if this doesn't work?" she thought. "What if they don't find her?" But she knew she had to try. It was her daughter's only chance at a good life. With one last kiss on her baby's forehead, Adebola gently put her near the gate of the big house. She made sure the cloth was comfortable and that the baby could be easily seen. "Be safe, my love," she whispered, before quickly hiding behind a nearby tree. From her hiding spot, Adebola watched the gate closely. Minutes passed, feeling like hours to the worried mother. Finally, the gate opened. Adebola held her breath as she saw a well-dressed man and woman step out. It was the rich couple who lived in the house. The couple stopped suddenly when they saw the bundle near their feet. "What's this?" the man asked, bending down to look closer. His wife gasped, It's a baby. Oh my goodness, how did it get here?" They looked around, trying to see who might have left the child. Adebola pressed herself against the tree, her heart beating fast. "We can't leave her out here," the woman said, carefully picking up the baby. "Let's take her inside and figure out what to do." The couple went back into their house, carrying Adebola's daughter with them. Adebola watched them go, feeling both relieved and heartbroken. She slid down the tree trunk, crying quietly. "Be good to her," she silently begged the rich couple. "Give her the life I can't." With a heavy heart, Adebola stood up and walked away from the big house. She knew she had made the right choice for her baby, but it didn't make the pain any easier to bear. As she made her way back to her shelter, Adebola whispered a final goodbye to her daughter. "I hope you have a wonderful life, my dear. Maybe someday, somehow, we'll meet again." Inside their luxurious home, Mr. and Mrs. Adime carefully carried the baby to their bedroom. They placed the infant on their large bed, both staring at the tiny bundle in disbelief. "What do we do now, Tunde?" Mrs. Adime asked, her voice filled with worry and excitement. Mr. Adime ran his hand through his hair, looking just as confused. I'm not sure, Folek. We should probably call the police, report this." Folek gently touched the baby's cheek, her eyes filling with tears. "But look at her, Tunde. She's so small, so helpless." The couple exchanged a meaningful look. They had been trying to have a child for years, spending lots of money on doctors, all without success. The pain of not being able to have a baby had made them very sad. Tunde sat down on the edge of the bed. "You know, Folek, maybe this isn't just a coincidence. We've prayed for a child for so long." Folek nodded, hope growing in her heart. "Do you think, could this be our miracle?" Tunde reached out and took his wife's hand. "Maybe it is. Maybe this is the gift we've been waiting for all these years." They both looked at the baby, who was now sleeping peacefully, not knowing about the big decision being made around her. "We could give her a wonderful life," Folek said softly. "Everything we've always wanted to give to our child." Tunde nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "You're right, we should keep the baby. This is our chance to be parents, Folek." Tears of joy ran down Folek's face as she carefully picked up the baby. "Hello, little one. We're your new mom and dad." Tunde hugged his wife and their new daughter. "We need to give her a name. What do you think?" Folek thought for a moment. "How about Oluwaseun? It means God has done this for me." "Oluwaseun," Tunde repeated, trying out the name. "I like it. Welcome to the family, Oluwaseun." As they realized they were suddenly parents, Tunde's practical side kicked in. You know, Folek, with our busy jobs, we might need some help. Maybe we should hire a nanny to look after Oluwayun when we're at work." Folek nodded in agreement. "That's a good idea. We want to give Oluwansiyu all the care and attention she needs." "I'll start looking for someone right away," Tundi said. "We'll find the perfect person to help us take care of our daughter." As they continued to marvel at their unexpected blessing, neither Tune nor Folek could have imagined the true story behind Oluwasiyun's arrival or the challenges that lay ahead in their new journey as parents. Adebola couldn't stop thinking about her baby. She spent her days and nights walking around the rich family's house, wondering if her daughter was okay. "Did I make the right choice?" she would ask herself, staring at the big gates. "Is my baby happy in there?" One evening, as she was walking near the house, a security guard saw her. "Miss, are you lost? You've been here for hours," he said. Adebola jumped, surprised. "No, I'm just walking," she said nervously. The guard looked at her suspiciously. "This isn't a public park. You can't stay here." Adebola nodded and walked away, feeling sad. She found a nearby bench and sat down crying. "I'm sorry, my baby," she whispered. "I hope you're happy in there." Adebola couldn't sleep well anymore. Every night, she would think about her child. "Is she being taken care of? Does she miss me?" she would ask the darkness, but no one answered. One day, as Adebola was walking her usual route around the big house, something caught her eye. A notice was posted on the wall. "Nanny needed." Her heart started beating fast as she read it. "This is it," she whispered to herself. "This could be my chance to see my baby again." Adebola stood there, staring at the notice, her mind racing. She knew it was risky. What if they recognized her? What if she couldn't handle being so close to her child without telling the truth? She walked back and forth, talking to herself. "Should I do this? Can I even do this job?" After thinking about it for a long time, Adebola made her decision. "I have to try," she said firmly. "I need to know she's okay." The next day, Adebola cleaned herself up as best she could and went to apply for the job. She practiced what she would say over and over. "Good morning," she said nervously to the woman at the gate. "I'm here about the nanny job." To Adebola's surprise, she was let in right away. She found herself sitting across from Mr. and Mrs. Adeyemi. "So, Adebola, tell us about your experience with children," Mr. Adeyemi said. Adebola took a deep breath. "I love children," she said, thinking of her baby. "I've helped raise my younger brothers and sisters." Mrs. Adeyemi smiled. "That's wonderful. How do you handle difficult situations with children?" "With patience and understanding," Adebola replied, her voice steadier now. The interview continued, and to Adebola's shock, it ended with Mr. Adeyemi saying, "Well, Adebola, we'd like to offer you the job. Can you start tomorrow?" Adebola nodded, barely able to speak. As she left the house, she felt both excited and scared. She was going to see her baby again, but at what cost? The next morning, Adebola arrived early at the Adeyemi's house, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. She was led inside and introduced to the house staff before finally meeting her daughter again. "Here she is." "Oluwaseun," Mrs. Adeyemi said with a warm smile, holding the baby in her arms. Adebola's heart nearly stopped as she saw her baby girl, now healthier and rounder than she remembered. Her big eyes sparkled, and she was dressed in a beautiful baby dress. For a moment, Adebola could hardly breathe. Her daughter looked happy, safe, and loved. But she had to play her role. "She's beautiful," Adebola managed to say. Forcing a smile, though, her chest ached with the desire to scoop the child into her arms and never let go. "Yes, we're so blessed," Mrs. Adeyemi beamed. "She's the joy of our lives." Adebola nodded, fighting back tears. "I'll take good care of her," she whispered. From that day on, Adebola's life became a bittersweet mix of joy and heartache. Every day she cared for Oluwaseun, feeding her, bathing her, rocking her to sleep, and watching her grow. Yet, she could never reveal the truth, that she was her real mother. She had to pretend to be just the nanny, hiding her love in the small, quiet moments when no one was watching. One evening, a few months after starting her job, Adebola was sitting with Oluwaseun on the porch, watching the baby sleep in her arms. The cool breeze blew softly, and everything seemed peaceful, but Adebola's mind was racing. "I can't go on like this forever," she thought. "Someday, they will find out. What will I do then?" Just as her thoughts deepened, She heard Mrs. Adeyemi approaching from behind. "You're wonderful with her, Adebola," she said, sitting down next to her. "Oluwasiun loves you so much." Adebola's heart skipped a beat. "Thank you, Ma," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. Mrs. Adeyemi gazed at the baby inside. "You know, Tunde and I always wanted children. For years we prayed and tried everything, but nothing worked. Then, like a miracle, she appeared at our doorstep." Adebola held her breath. "A miracle," she thought. "If only Mrs. Adeyemi knew the truth." "We believe God sent her to us," Mrs. Adeyemi continued. "She's our little blessing." Adebola nodded, her throat tightening with emotion. She realized that as much as it hurt, Oluwasiun was better off with the Adeyemis. They could give her a life she could never provide, a life filled with love, comfort, and opportunities. As the months turned into years, Adebola grew closer to the Adeyemi family. Oluwaseun, now a curious toddler, adored her nanny, always running to Adebola for comfort and hugs. Every smile, every laugh from her daughter filled Adebola's heart with warmth, but it also reminded her of the secret she was keeping. One day, as Oluwaseun played in the garden, something unexpected happened. Mr. Adeyemi was going through some old paperwork and found a small note that had fallen behind a drawer. It was the note Adebola had left with her baby on that fateful night. "Please take care of my daughter. Her name is Oluwasiun." Confused, Mr. Adeyemi went to his wife. "Falake, did you see this note before? It was in the drawer. The handwriting seems familiar." Mrs. Adeyemi took the note and examined it closely. "No, I haven't seen this before. But this handwriting, it looks like..." She paused, her eyes narrowing. "It looks like Adebola's handwriting." They exchanged a worried glance. Later that evening, after Oluwasiun had gone to bed, Mr. and Mrs. Adeyemi called Adebola into the living room. "Adebola," Mr. Adeyemi began, holding the note in his hand, "we need to ask you something. Please be honest with us." Adebola's heart raced as she saw the note in his hand. Her throat went dry, and she knew her secret had finally caught up with her. "Yes, sir," she whispered, her hands trembling. Mr. Adeyemi handed her the note. "Did you write this?" Adebola stared at the paper, her vision blurring as tears welled up in her eyes. She had always known this day would come, but she wasn't ready for it. Her body felt frozen, yet she knew she had to speak. "Yes," she finally admitted, her voice barely audible. "I wrote it." Mrs. Adeyemi gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. You're her mother?" Adebola nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, I am. I'm so sorry for not telling you sooner. I didn't know what else to do. I was young, scared, and had no way to care for her. Leaving her with you was the hardest decision of my life." Silence filled the room as Mr. and Mrs. Adeyemi processed this revelation. Adebola sobbed quietly, waiting for their reaction. Finally, Mrs. Adeyemi spoke, her voice shaking. "Why didn't you tell us?" "I didn't want to take her away from you," Adebola cried. "You've given her a wonderful life, and I could never give her that. I've seen how much you love her. That's all I ever wanted for her." Mr. Adeyemi stood up, pacing the room. "This is a lot to take in. What are we supposed to do now?" Adebola wiped her tears. "I don't want to cause trouble. I just want to know she's safe and happy. That's all." Mrs. Adeyemi looked at her, her own eyes filled with tears. "She is. But Adebola, you're her mother. We can't just ignore that." Over the next few weeks, the Adeyemi family faced a difficult decision. They knew they couldn't pretend everything was the same after learning the truth, but they also loved Oluwasiun deeply and didn't want to lose her. One evening, they sat down with Adebola for a heartfelt conversation. "We don't want to take Oluwasiun away from you," Mrs. Adeyemi said, "but we can't pretend this secret doesn't exist." Mr. Adeyemi nodded. "Maybe there's a way we can make this work together." Adebola looked up in surprise. "What do you mean?" "We could raise her together," Mrs. Adeyemi suggested. "You'll always be a part of her life as her mother. We'll be her parents too, the ones who provide for her and give her stability." Adebola's eyes widened in shock. You do that even after everything." Mrs. Adeyemi reached out and took Adebola's hand. "You gave us the greatest gift we could ever ask for. We want to honor that." Tears filled Adebola's eyes once more, but this time they were tears of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." And so a new chapter began. Oluwasiun grew up with two families who loved her dearly. Adebola remained a constant presence in her life, and though the path had been hard, she finally found peace in knowing that her daughter would never be alone. Together, they created a future filled with love, understanding, and forgiveness. Wow, what a journey! What did you learn from Adebola's story? How would you handle such a difficult situation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If this story moved you or made you think, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Share it with your friends, and of course, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more inspiring stories like this one. And be sure to turn on the notification bell so you'll always be the first to know when a new video drops. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.